Welcome to Unraveling Relationships, Emotions, and Desires. I am your host, Dr. Sheila Hodgman Dover. Today's dialogue transcends mere conversation. It is a testament to resilience in the face of profound adversity. Our distinguished guest, Shanti Hubbard, licensed professional counselor, embodies a rare duality, a clinician who mends the wounds of trauma and a survivor who has navigated its harrowing depths firsthand. Her expertise is not only academic, it is etched into the fabric of her lived experience. Long before January 10th, 2023, the day the man she once loved, the father of her children, tried to extinguish her breath in front of their young eyes. Shanti had already known loss. The death of her father carved a harrow space in her life, a grief that taught her both the fragility of love and the unyielding strength required to mourn while still moving forward. That loss, that before, would later shape how she understood the after the choking hands, the raspy voice, the children who ask questions no child should have to voice. And yet, here we stand. Here she stands, a scholar, a big scholar, adding degree to her accolades while teaching her children that love should never demand silence. And she agrees with that. Love should never demand silence. Here she heals, her hands steady as she guides clients through their pain, even as her own throat still recalls the weight of this grip. The weight of that grip still is on her mind. But here she persists, rewriting a narrative that was never hers to carry. This is not merely a story of survival. It is an indication, is an indictment of a world that asks victims to soften their truth for the comfort of others, of systems that prioritize a perpetrator's potential over families' safety, of the irony that the man who named their son also taught him to ask, why do you love someone who tried to kill you? Shanti, your presence here is both a gift and a galvanizing force. We are honored to be a witness. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So before we discuss your professional path, let's go back to the beginning about your formative years, your formative experience in your childhood. How did those experiences shape the remarkable capacity to show empathy and to be who you are today?
So I guess I would say it was formed from a lot of pain. My parents have been divorced since I was 6 months old, and my mother left when I was about 6 weeks old.
Mhm.
So I've never known a home where my parents were together. And I
Mhm.
remember every birthday I would wish that they would get back together.
Mhm.
Happily, as I got older, I realized that was not a good thing.
Mhm.
But as a child, you hope, like you see other families and you wonder why yours doesn't look the same. And the older I got, the more I was exposed to just how much my parents were not good for each other. So I would have to share custody between both of them. And I remember being really young and feeling like a rag doll.
Mhm.
Like parents say, well, this is my time. Well, this is my time. And not being considered how that actually made me feel. I
Mhm.
just felt like an object in a room that people were fighting over. And I remember having my first suicidal thought at 5 that if I wasn't here, my parents could go on and live their lives and potentially be happy because they didn't have to deal with each other. And those thoughts didn't really stop as I got older. So I made friendships. School was always a happy place. I loved being at school. I loved not having to be home mostly, but I loved getting challenged. I loved the knowledge. I loved getting fed information that didn't come with pain. There's nothing painful about 1 + 1 = 2. So that always made me feel good. And then I've gotten amazing friends over the years, and I can genuinely say I wouldn't be here without my friends. So throughout, especially high school, I noticed a lot of people like to talk to me, and they felt super comfortable talking to me about things they don't talk to other people about. So that took me further into feeling like I never wanted somebody else to feel like I felt as a kid.
Mhm. Wow, that was deep.
Yeah.
Really, really deep. Okay, let's talk about your calling to therapy. Just a little bit. We're not going to go in depth as yet. Your academic path is very wide. Psychology, chemistry, philosophy. That's a lot. This suggests someone deeply curious about human nature. Was there a defining moment when you realized therapy wasn't just a career, but a calling? And how did your early work with domestic violence survivors confirm this path? So that's, sorry, I should not ask so many questions, two questions all out, two deep questions at the same time. Well, we could talk about, was there a defining moment when you realized therapy wasn't just a career choice, but a calling?
I would say there's probably two. The first one wasn't as obvious that it was therapy that was the career choice, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a confirmation that I had to do something with people. So it was senior year in high school, and I remember in 1 week, three of my friends, not in the same day, but spread out throughout the week, had told me that they had been raped. Not right then, but just over their past. And I remember Friday came, and the rule was in my house if you, like, if I wanted to go somewhere, I had to clean up. So I was sweeping the floor, and it hit me at once, and I had to stop. I was just crying really hard on the couch. And I was like, that is a lot to hear for a small person, because also
Mm-hmm.
I have skipped a grade, so I'm also younger than everybody else. And I remember thinking, just how is there so much pain from so many different people, and how did not all of it, but how did so much of it have to hit me at once?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember it was when I moved to Oklahoma and I don't remember which class it was, but when I was in my master's program, I was sitting in a class and we had to get into groups. And I don't remember what the prompt was, but I remember one person in my group turned to me and they started talking about their experience of sexual assault. And I remember texting one of my friends that I had made at University of Houston Clear Lake, and she had talked to me about some of her past. And I told her, I was like, I think this is what I'm meant to do. Like, this random person just told me this, and it had nothing to do with the prompt. I don't remember what the prompt was, but I remember it had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just talking, just it flowed. And they were like, I've never told anybody that before. I'm like, I got to do this. And I remember from that point on, I knew I had to, for my practicum, find a domestic violence agency to work at.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Mom. Okay. So before you attended college, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I always hated that question growing up. I purposely do not ask my children that question because we always had career day at school, and there was doctors and teachers and lawyers, and I knew I didn't want to be any of that. My dad was a doctor, my dad was a doctor, a police officer, many, many things, but my mom was a special ed teacher, and I knew I didn't want to be either of those. That was completely off the table. I didn't want to be a lawyer, and just none of the careers spoke to me. So I remember one career day, because we had to dress up. I asked my dad, I was like, I don't know what I want to be. So what am I supposed to dress up as? So he told me to dress up as an educated Black person here to scare all the people. And I was like, okay. So I wore his coat and his white coat. And I went to school like that. And they were like, what are you? I'm an educated Black person.
Mhm.
So I had no idea what I could be, what I wanted to be.
Mhm.
I knew I could be anything. Like that is, even with all the things I went through with my parents, they made sure I knew I
Mhm.
could be anything that I wanted.
Mhm.
Nothing called me.
So your dad helped you think outside the box then?
Oh, absolutely. My dad was a very out the box person. So thinking outside the box was a guarantee.
Okay. So you mentioned your dad was a man who helped you. He thought outside of the box. What memories of him still guide you today? And how did his absence alter your sense of safety or identity?
So my dad told me a lot of stories growing up, not make-believe stories, but I realize this is also probably why therapy is my career path. I would always ask my parents questions about their past. I'd be like, I get in the car and I say, tell me a story. And I'm not the person that liked make up stories because some people tell children like they just pull together different things. Like, no, I want to know a true story that happened to you,
Mhm.
and I have to know that it's true. So he would tell me a lot of stories about his past. My dad used to say a whole lot of quotes. So I am a very big quote person.
Mhm.
When he passed, I got one of the quotes that he said quite often tattooed in his handwriting. And it says, common sense ain't common. And I actually got it on the first Father's Day without him. And I use that quote all the time. Like sometimes I won't even say it, I'll just put out my tattoo.
Wow.
Um, but my dad always believed in education. He believed in you can do it. And his life was definitely a testament to that. He was like I said, police officer and a doctor. He also worked at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So he worked on non-manned flights to space. He was an astrophysicist. He was the first Black man to graduate from Cal State Dominguez with a physics degree. He flew helicopters. He used to fly to other countries to perform charity work on children because he was an orthopedic surgeon. So he used to do that too. Um, anything that you can, not anything, but a lot of things that you can think of that one person shouldn't be able to do at the same time. My dad did it. So I can't, it's never that he told me that I can't isn't a word, but I definitely use that because I saw that's not an option. You can do anything. So that definitely carried me. Like, I would say the hardest test of my life was probably the NCE, National Counselor's Exam. And unfortunately, I had to take that 2 months after he passed. So my mind wasn't all that focused. I'm typically somebody who doesn't need to study.
Mhm.
I absolutely studied my butt off for the test. And I remember on my way to that test, again, so nervous, but my right in front of me pulled up a white Porsche. I was in Oklahoma, so those are not common. And I was also going down a back road. A white Porsche was my dad's favorite car. Of all his cars that he had in his life, that was his favorite car. So I saw that car pull in front of me and it stayed there for a little while. And then I felt I could smell him. And I don't know how to explain that, but I could smell him like right next to me. And I think that helped me pass because right before that, I had taken the ethics exam and he sent me a text saying, I know you can pass any test. So it was good to keep that being true.
Yes, great memories. So how were you affected by his loss, his death? How did that affect you?
I was absolutely devastated. I always knew. So as a kid, and my kids still think this is weird. A lot of kids, like when they watch Disney movies, people understand if you cry at Lion King or Bambi. No, every time I would watch The Little Mermaid at the end, when she leaves her dad, I would cry because I never wanted to leave my dad. My sister, who's much older than me, she's 24 years older than me, she and I share a father. And I remember growing up and she wasn't really around much. She didn't talk to my dad. And I made it a point to myself. I made a promise to myself. I would never leave my dad. No matter what happened, I would always talk to my dad. I would always be there with my dad. So the idea that a little girl could leave her dad willingly, it bothered
Mhm.
me so much.
Mhm.
So I remember being at work during December, so close to Christmas, and I got a phone call from California, and an officer called and said, "Is this Shanti?" And I was like, "Yes." And then he told me to hold on. So he said he was going to call me back. So that confused me.
Mhm.
Um, but then he called me back in like 5 minutes, and he told me that they found my dad outside of his home, just laying there.
Sad.
And very sad. So not only did he die, he died alone. And I'm pretty sure the last text he sent was to me. Um, I just hit the floor. I hit the floor. I started crying. I couldn't move. My coworkers came in. They were super helpful. They canceled the rest of my appointments for the day. Um, Devastated. Like I never wanted to live in a world where my dad didn't exist.
Mhm.
And even though growing up, he was not the kindest person at all. Um, by the time I was a sophomore in college, I feel like we were on a great path to mending our relationship. And I made it a point to talk to him every Sunday. I told him all the things with the kids. He would send me fun educational things for the kids. He was so excited. I got to spend the Christmas before, just him, me, and my daughter. And he said he saw the same look in her eyes that I have as far as education goes. And that was so beautiful to see. So it crushed everything. Everything.
Were there misconceptions about grief you had to unlearn after your passing of your dad?
Well, one thing which may be different, I know when people pass, people tell others like I'm sorry. I hated hearing I'm sorry. Like that's why I didn't post about my dad's death on Facebook or anything until the day of his memorial. Um, I felt like when people said, I'm sorry, now not only do I have how I'm feeling, now I'm taking how you feel and it's on me. And I feel like and it could be an occupational hazard, but now I feel like I got to make you feel better because you're sorry. I don't have time for that right now. So I hated hearing I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Um, it's helped me be more creative with what I've told others when grief happens.
Okay.
Um, the misconception that there's a timeline. There's no timeline on grief.
All
You
right.
carry it, you learn how to manage it better, but there's no timeline. The
Mhm.
thing which I actually sent to a couple of my friends who've lost people close to them before my dad passed, and I didn't realize how much I would need it. But it's called a ball in a box.
Oh.
And basically, if you picture a box, there's a giant ball in it. The ball takes up the whole box. So at first, it feels like every day, every moment, every breath, that ball hits the box and it has a button on the side of it. So it's constantly hitting that button. That button is pain.
Mhm.
Over time, it's not that the ball gets smaller, it's that the box gets bigger. And that represents how you're able to move through life. So it still hits that button, but it doesn't hit it as often.
Mhm.
So when it does hit the button, it represents like death anniversaries, birthdays, holidays. And it's gotten me to a point where I know certain days are going to bother me. Some of those days also surprised me. I didn't realize Thanksgiving was going to be a hard thing for me, but
Mhm.
Thanksgiving is a really hard day for me. Mother's Day, actually, I shut down. Um, but I've become very intentional knowing that certain days are coming. So on his birthday, I do something. On Father's Day, I do something. On the day that he passed, I let everyone know I will not be available to talk to.
Mhm.
So I shut my phone off and I watch our favorite movie. I remember, I hold his urn. I learned that grief is specific. And I don't know if you watch Marvel, but there was a show called WandaVision, and I truly believe they gave the best perspective on grief to me. And they said, what is grief if not love persevering? So the extent of your love is going to be the extent of your grief, and that's not a bad thing. That
Mhm.
just means you can love that much.
Mhm. Well, I know I hate it when people tell me the person is in a better place.
Hate
Uh,
that.
I that's like a sore spot for me when I'm told that. So what do you tell people instead? What is one thing you tell people when after a loss?
So it depends on how well I know the person and depends
Okay.
on how close they are to that person. I know recently actually, um, one of my friends were not as close anymore, but I was in her wedding and her mom just passed. So I sent her a message and I said, her dad had actually passed right before mine did. So we were going down that journey together too.
Mm.
So now she's lost both. And I sent her a message and I was like, I know you've already been through so much and I know how much your mother meant to you. I hope you can still feel her when you're happy, when you're lonely, when you're sad, when you have immense joy. I hope you can feel her right there.
Powerful words.
Yeah,
Makes more sense.
it does. And my mom, like when people pass around her and she knows that I know maybe the person, it's like, oh, send them a message. And I'm like, I'm way too intentional with my words to just, here you go. Like, no, I need to know that you even want me to know that information. And you're in a space to hear it. Because
Yes.
again, I hate I'm sorry, so I won't project that. It doesn't mean that other people don't find comfort in that,
Yes.
but I'm not, my body isn't going to let me say something I'm not okay
Mhm.
with.
Mhm. Well, I'll tell you another thing I hate, which
Mhm.
many people like. I hate, how are you doing? I hate that question. Even though, when you're working in our job, we would ask people, how are you feeling, right?
Mhm.
I don't like being asked that question.
I hate that question too. And I don't use it unless I mean it because people have put that too much as a general, oh, I just say this thing. No, if I'm not okay and I tell you I'm not okay, what are you going to do with that
Yes.
information?
And can you handle the truth if I tell you
Can you
the
handle
truth?
it?
And most people
Exactly.
can't.
No, they absolutely cannot. So when I ask that question in session, I say, how are you? And they'll say, I'm good. And I'm like, no, that's the answer you give to everybody. So how are you really? Because when I ask that question, I mean it. And I don't ask anyone that question unless I'm ready and in a space to receive that answer and deal with that answer. So
Yeah.
no, I hate that question. And I do actually believe in stupid questions. So if somebody's crying and you say, how are you? Maybe they're not good. So let's also use our brains and have the
Yes.
questions that match the situation.
Correct, correct, correct.
Mhm.
Okay, let me move on because we can stay there for a long time. Let's move on to domestic violence. The
Okay.
experience with domestic violence is harrowing, not just as a survivor, but as a therapist who's specializing in this trauma. Walk us through that moment you became aware that you were a victim of domestic violence. I know it's hard to know. You're helping people with experiencing domestic violence, but you yourself are in a similar situation. When did you first realize that?
With my marriage,
Yes.
um, yeah, you're right. I don't have a pinpointed moment because if I'm being honest, a lot of things that we were going through even before we got married were not okay.
Mhm.
We were young, and I truly, truly, truly believe that we do love each other. But domestic violence, I'm not a stranger to domestic violence, even growing up. So it goes into that level of comfort. Like, yes, I know this is wrong, but I can handle it. I remember being young, shouldn't have been that young watching this movie, but I was young watching What's Love Got to Do with It. And when he said, "Are you going to leave me like everybody else?" And she's like, "No, I'm not going to leave you." I didn't have role models growing up as far as like regular people, but Tina Turner was always my role model to the point where when she did die, unfortunately, my friends messaged me like, "Are you okay?" because they know how much I loved her. And I believed because I could take it, I'm supposed to be there through all the bad things, through watching you hurt, being in pain. I can't leave that, even if I know it's not good for me. So a big quote that I use with my clients now is you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep the person you love warm. You don't. But I was constantly lighting a match.
I
So as
love
far
that. I need to write now that quote. Say that, repeat it for me, please. Let me write it down.
you don't have to set yourself on fire
You don't have. I love it.
to keep the person you love warm.
I like that.
So as far as a pinpoint, I don't have one. I don't. There was a lot of bad things that I knew were bad, and it was the stigma of being a single mom, being a single Black mom, being young. Could I do it by myself? Would he still help if I was doing it by myself? Which not necessarily as a, I don't think he would have disappeared because he's not that kind of person. He loves his children. He loves his children. But to the level that I may have needed, and that may sound a little selfish, but so I wanted somebody constantly there to help with the kids.
Mhm.
Um, which ironically, it turns out he was also in the military, so he did deploy, and I ended up alone with multiple children. So ended up having to learn how to do it myself. But no, it was just a lot of things that were happening over the years that shouldn't have happened.
Okay. So, what emotions you dealt with while you were experiencing domestic violence, and what was your thought process, and how did that affect you?
So a lot of, I'd say the biggest thing was I would turn my emotions into myself. So it's my fault if I wasn't here. A lot of the things I told myself when I was 5. Um, there's no escape to this except to be dead. Um, I felt scared. I felt trapped. I felt alone. And it's, I would say, especially hard when that person actually has been someone who was there for you when no one else was. And it's not in a situation where he isolated me so that he could be the only one. That wasn't the case. It was not my friends, but like family support system. They weren't good. They weren't a good support system. They came with a lot of pain too. Like my dad, as amazing as he was as a person, yeah. as a person, he was not an emotional person. And my mother is way too emotional. So I wouldn't go to my dad about feelings. And I
Mhm.
couldn't go to my mom because she'd make it about her. So when I found him, he got it. Like from the first day, like when we first met, by the end of the night, we said we were going to get married. We absolutely did. We spent 8 hours just talking and we were like, I'm going to marry you. Yep, we're going to do that.
So you connected and bonded on many areas.
Many. Like, and we still, interestingly enough, like we still hold a lot of the same ideals, values, especially in the way we raise our children. Like we agree on most things when it comes down to the kids.
Mhm. So you had a war going on. Part of you know he's the ideal father, and you're compatible in so many ways. And then the same person you love so much, on the other hand, is your abuser. On the other hand, how did you balance out those two sets of war going on?
Not healthily. I don't even know if that's a word, but not healthily. I self-harmed quite a bit. Um, we would get into arguments. I was not a good communicator at all before. It took maybe even being in this job growing older, having a fully developed frontal lobe, all the different things. But we would argue. Um, he would yell. Eventually, I started yelling back, but before yelling used to retreat me.
Mhm.
Um, I had to find a voice first. So it wasn't really a good balance. And it's hard. It's also hard. Like, yes, he was a good father, but he knew me better than anyone. Like, he knew my breath.
Uh-huh.
If I moved, if I halfway thought a wrong thing, he was right there and he knew, which is also why the abuse hurts so much because you know me this well and you still choose to do certain things because it's abuse is a choice.
Yeah.
Like
So let me ask, sorry, go ahead.
to the point where our connection was so strong even after divorce. Like I remember I was sitting in my home in Oklahoma. He had moved to Texas and I was thinking about some painful things that had happened and I was like, if I think hard enough, I can make him call me. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it though. And I thought I shut it down. 5 minutes later, he called my phone and was like, what's wrong? People don't have those kind of connections.
Yes. That, that was a real connection. So what was it
Mhm.
that made you decide to get a divorce? What was the icing on the cake?
So I had actually moved out um, before we got divorced. So we were just separated. I took a while before he knew where I lived because I didn't feel safe. Um, I don't remember how I ended up telling him where I lived, but I told him where I lived. He had came in the house while I was not home. I believe he had a key. I'm not totally sure though. He didn't break in, but I don't remember if it was open or if he had a key.
Mhm.
Um, and he took my ring, my wedding ring. Like I had put it on my dresser because I went to work and I wasn't wearing. I was trying to get used to not wearing it.
Mhm.
And I came home and I was looking for it because we were going to go to an event for my daughter. And I texted him. I was like, "Where's my ring?" He was like, "What ring? Where's my ring?" And he was like, "Oh, that ring. You don't need it anymore." So you stole my ring.
Mhm.
He was like, "No, you just don't need it anymore." So I was like, "That's what we're gonna do." Okay, I'm done. So I went and filed that day.
Okay. Now, some people who don't know any better can understand why someone would have a relationship with the abuser even after you leave them and even allow them to come into your house. Some people don't understand that.
No.
Can you explain a little bit about the two war that goes on with the amazing, awful at the same time, plus parenting, co-parenting at the same time?
So yes, a big part of it was the kids. I didn't make these kids alone. I shouldn't have to be the only one that has to do the things with the kids. Um, and they were so little at the time. There was still a lot of in-home things to do. So like nighttime routines, morning routines, diapers. It was a lot of in-home things to do.
Um,
Um, but like I mentioned, he's someone that knew me better than anyone. There's a comfort in that. There's a comfort in I don't have to explain that I don't feel good today. And
mhm,
not even just physically, just emotionally. I don't have to explain that. Now, what you choose to do after that, that's different. But that having to dump everything, hoping somebody gets it, that was not there.
mhm,
And because this person knew me so well, because this person could do before I could think, like he honestly was the person that cooked more than I did.
mhm,
Um, that takes off a lot of burden when you go to work all day and then you're not the one that has to come home and cook. Because today, not literally today, but these days, I get the kids get in the car and my oldest is asking, so what are you making for dinner? Can I breathe? Can I breathe? I do miss that part where I'm not the one that has to cook in the home.
yes.
But yes, it's this person hurt you,
Mhm,
but this person hurt you. and this person also does these things.
Mm-hmm. It's complicated.
It's very complicated. And yes, I was afraid for my safety, but there's also that level in there. I didn't have a high regard for my safety either. Like I mentioned, I was self-harming. I've been suicidal since I was 5. You can convince yourself that you deserve a lot of things that are not true. Like I tell my clients, you don't have to believe everything you think. Because a lot of what we think about ourselves, especially the negative stuff, all of the negative stuff, did not come from us. You don't come out the womb thinking you're less than. You don't
Correct.
come out the womb feeling guilty. Guilt is something that is put on you.
Mm-hmm.
So when this person that's saying they love you, that in some ways does show that they love you, is also hurting you, you feel like you must have done something to deserve it. Or maybe you have done things wrong because we're human. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that I was a perfect wife. Nowhere near.
Mm-hmm.
I had my flaws too,
Mm-hmm.
but no one deserves verbal abuse. No one deserves, in our relationship, it was a lot of sexual abuse. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Well, if it was that, how could you go back? How could you sleep in the same bed? How could you have consensual sex?
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue, and it's been a while, but my own personal theory is that once consent has been taken out of a sexual relationship, it can never fully be present. You can convince yourself, but
Mm-hmm.
it can never fully be present. You know, if you don't say yes, it's gonna happen anyway, so you might as well say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that you don't want it sometimes, because physiologically, humans need 4 things: food, water, sleep, and sex is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that equal relationship is not there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I want to ask you a weird question that
mhm.
I've heard many people talk about. I've heard many people suffer with chronic guilt because their body respond positively to being raped, and so they feel guilty because maybe they had an orgasm during the process of being raped. So now they think it's their fault. And
Yeah.
can you
Um,
talk to that?
Absolutely. So not only a domestic violence counselor, also a sexual assault counselor. So for my job, we have to wear scrubs. I have on my scrubs sexual assault survivor for my teal scrubs because teal is sexual assault. April is sexual assault awareness month. A physiological response is not equal to arousal. Your body is designed to react to certain things, to certain stimuli. Masturbation, the first instances of masturbation that people experience are actually in the womb. And it's not an intentional, oh, I'm going to touch myself and do this. It's your hands and feet are moving all around. It touches a spot. Your body says it feels good. You keep touching that spot. It's not conscious. It's not what we see as this sexual thing. As we get older, we learn that that's what that means. But initially, no. So the human body, if we're talking about women, inside there's a sensitive area called what people call the G spot. If something touches that repeatedly, it will cause an orgasm. Your body, as women, lubrication happens not because you want the sex to happen, not because you want the intercourse to happen, but is it a protective factor that the body has come up with to reduce pain, to reduce stretching, not stretching, to reduce tearing,
Uh-huh.
and to make it so your body doesn't rip apart, basically.
Uh-huh.
So you getting lubrication does not mean my brain said that I am getting ready to want this. No. And an orgasm is just repeated touching in a sensitive area that led to a release.
So did you know that all the time, or was there a time when you felt guilt for experiencing that?
Um,
If you did experience it, sorry, I should ask.
no, I did. It took me a while to realize that that's what that feeling was, like the guilt. I told him I didn't want it. He's doing it anyway, but I reacted, so he must think that I actually want it. It wasn't until I got in this job and I started doing research and I started doing presentations and trainings where I looked up this information to find out, no, it's a physiological response. And men actually get physiological responses to being sexually assaulted as well. A erect penis does not mean they want sex. They wake up in the morning with an erect penis most of the time. There have been a few. They don't do as much research on men, unfortunately, as women when it comes down to sexual assault. But there's been research studies that show under pressure, under duress, men can become erect because it's blood rushing places. That's it. So, like, if you think teenagers in a classroom, teacher calls on you to go to the board and write an answer to a problem, sometimes they'll get an erection. It's not because they think the teacher looks all that great. It is a nervous reaction and blood rushing.
Interesting. I need to do some more research on this, the in the womb pad. I've never heard of that one before. I have to do some research on that. When I was doing my master's program at Cameron, I did complete in-depth research on masturbation.
Really?
Yeah, I was actually going to do my PhD on that until I learned that nobody was interested in that topic. So I
Not
had,
anymore, but Kinsey,
yeah.
we had to do Kinsey in
Yeah.
undergrad.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, so let's move on to the deepest part of everything. Walk us through February 10th, 2023, when your worst fear became reality.
So do you want just that day or the things leading up to
The
that?
things leading up to it.
Okay, so I had picked up the kids from him that Sunday. He had them for the weekend because I had just had a house party. I mean, not a house party, a housewarming because I had recently moved in and my friends were able to come down then. So I had a housewarming. So he had the kids and I picked them up. That day he had asked about us having sex again because, from being honest, we were still having sex. Um, we had sex 2 times three times since I had moved back to Texas. And I had told him I didn't want to anymore. Um, Honestly, I wasn't getting physical satisfaction from it. So I was like, I don't want to anymore. He called me later that night to ask about tax information. And I did have a little bit of an attitude. I learned that when I have like a big event and a lot of people that love me and then they go away, I have that sense of emptiness. And I didn't know that then, but that came out in my voice and an attitude. Um, he was like, okay. So I was like, okay, bye. Hung up. The next day he sent me a text. So Monday, he sent me a text and he asked if I had the children's birth certificates and socials. And I was like, I'm sorry. He called me and he texted me, but I was in session. So I called him after I got out of session. And then he asked me that. And I said, not on me. Like, I'm at work. He was like, oh, no, I know. Just when you get home, can you give it to me? So I asked him why. And he has always hated when I asked him why. So he started yelling. He said, this is blasphemy. These are my kids. I deserve to have. And I'm like, okay, nobody said you couldn't have it. Just wondering why you need it now, because the kids have been with him for months. Um, he hung up on me and I let it go. I
Mhm.
also looked at the date because, like I mentioned earlier about death anniversaries, that was the same date that his father had passed. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give him that. Maybe that's hitting him and he doesn't realize it's hitting him, so I left it alone. The next day, he texted me. This time I responded back in a text. He called me and texted me. This time I responded back in a text. And he had asked for them again, the birth certificates and socials. And I said, I can give it to you when I pick up the kids from your mom's house this weekend. Like I was gonna make copies, bring it to you. And he said, that's not gonna work. He needs it before then. And I'm like, why does this feel like it's rushed? And he said, well, I needed it yesterday, but you were acting like that. And I was like, that still feels rushed. Um, so I didn't agree to give it to him then. And I'm sorry, that was Wednesday. So first time was Monday, second time was Wednesday. And the way the conversation went, like I got a feeling and I didn't feel safe. So I ended up not staying at my house. So at this time, he didn't know where I lived. Well, at least I thought he didn't know where I lived because I had never told him. I left and I went to a friend's house out of state to just in case he tried to drive by or whatever. So I drove in back to work the next morning. Um, didn't hear from him. Friday, didn't hear from him. I was talking to his mom because I was going to pick him up. I was running late because of traffic. Houston has horrible traffic. Running late, went and got them out the house, talked to her for a little bit, came out, and he was there. And he was holding his other child, like in the car seat. He has another child with someone else. Um, that was made after we got divorced. But holding that, and I was looking, and he asked me where the birth certificate and the socials were. And I was like, I don't have them. And he said, I don't remember a lot of the conversation anymore, but he had said, if I don't, I need to meet with him either tomorrow morning or he'll be at my house. Early tomorrow morning or he'll be at my house. And I said, and if you show up at my house and I haven't given you my address, I will call the police. I was getting in my car, like me and the kids were getting in the car at that point, and he said something else. Like after I said that, I was getting back in the car. He said something else, and I stepped away from the car. And I don't remember what exact words were exchanged at that moment. But next thing I knew, he lunged at me, and the way his mother's driveway is, it's on a slope. So we were like right here on the top of the slope. And he lunged at me, brought me to the ground. His hands were around my throat. He was squeezing. I heard the kids screaming from the car. His mom had walked out at some point, and I remember seeing her trying to get him off of me. Then I saw my daughter come around trying to get him off of me, and then his mom grabbed her and moved her out the way. That whole time I was trying to kick him in the balls, just being honest, trying to get him off of me, and it wasn't working. And I don't know what made him let go, but he finally let go. And then we ended up getting up, yelling at each other. And he said, I should have been dead. He should have been killed me. If he was more like his dad, he would have been killed me. Got the kids in the house. We started talking more. He finally told me he wanted the birth certificates and socials for doctor paperwork. And I'm like, okay, why didn't you just say that? To which I did end up giving to him, and he never used because when it was time for my kids' annual, my oldest was like, she got in the car with me and said, when are you going to bring us to the doctor? And I was like, what are you talking about? About your dad was bringing you out to the doctor. Like, no, it's our birthday and we still haven't been to the doctor. You need to get us to the doctor. I'm like, not you put that on me. Okay. But yeah, that's how that did me.
That sounds scary.
It was terrifying. And I forgot to mention, as I was pulling into his mother's driveway to pick up the kids, I was on the phone with one of my best friends, and I remember telling her right before I got out the car, I was like, I really hope something bad doesn't happen tonight. She's like, it's gonna be okay. I'm like, just really hope something bad doesn't happen. The worst thing happened.
So you were sensing something could be happening.
I told his mother, like I made a point to make a call before I moved from Oklahoma to Texas. And I said, when I move out there, I feel like something bad's gonna happen. She was like, oh, dude. And I was like, no, I need you to hear me right now. Something bad will happen. She said, okay, I hear you.
What was her response when she saw him choking you?
So initially, she asked what happened. So I started telling her the storyline I told you. And when I said I had asked why, she's like, and that's where you messed up. And I was like, no, just like he has the right to have the information, I have the right to know why. I didn't tell him he couldn't have it. I didn't even have it on me to give him. I just wanted to know why. I can ask that question. His thing has always been, it's not about what I say, but how I say it. So because of that, and I did admit I had an attitude problem
But
because
his
of that,
mom is blaming the victim.
constantly, constantly. Um, I was like, no, I checked my tone before I asked that question on purpose. But when we were standing there and the kids were in the house, she did, because I told her then that we were still having sex, and she was super surprised, disappointed. Um, but she did actually tell him, "You saw your father do this to me. How could you do this to somebody else? Like, you saw what that did to me. You hated how that was. How could you do this? Because I didn't do anything to him that day."
How did he respond to his mom with that question?
He said he knows. He claimed he felt bad, and he called the kids. Like when we were about to leave, the kids came in, and he was like, "You need to protect each other, especially your mom." And I didn't like it because it's super hypocritical. Like, how you gonna tell them to do that and you can't do that?
Wow.
Yeah. He claimed he was gonna be a better person, better all these things, and that's when the sex part came out. Because I was like, "How you gonna be a better partner and we're still having sex? Like that, actively cheating."
Mhm. Okay, you describe being choked in front of your children, hearing your daughter scream. How did that moment change your understanding of abuse, especially as someone who'd spent years helping survivors?
So being strangled, I don't know if it probably is my brain protecting itself. I physically can't go back to that moment. Like to put my brain and my body in that moment, I can't. I was terrified. I do remember being terrified that this was how I go. This is the last thing my children see. And I didn't want that to be a thing. The also part that a lot of people will say is, why didn't the person just leave? He and I had been divorced for 3 years when this happened. So it wasn't about if I was gone.
Mhm.
We still have to deal with each other for children, like, and more. Like, I don't take away that we were doing more,
And a lot
but
of people don't realize that a lot of women get killed after they leave.
it is, and as of 2021, it is 75% more likely for a victim to die if they leave. 75% more likely. So no, it's not safer to leave. It's actually safer to stay. And he's made comments over the years about, I want to get the words right, that not that if he couldn't have me, no one will. Like, no. He did say that early on, but it was more alluding to, I will always be his. No,
Mhm.
he actually made that statement. I will always be his.
Interesting. So how did your body keep score of that trauma that you experienced? And what helped you regain a sense of physical safety?
So because he had made the statement that he was going to show up at my house, I no longer felt safe at my house. I didn't, I was worried that at any moment he was going to come in. So the biggest thing when you're working with victims of domestic violence, you develop safety plans. So I safety planned my whole house. If he comes in this door, how am I getting out? If he comes in this window, how am I getting out? If he comes in this side. So I safety planned the whole house. Um, I stopped being able to wear necklaces and shirts that would even come up here because every time something grazed my neck, I felt like it was happening again.
Mhm.
And ironically, this is sadly not the first time I've been strangled, and he knew that. And the last time we had sex, like, because some people do put hands around necks when they're having sex. Um, I had told him not to because I don't like I was feeling triggered, not by him at that moment, but just I remember feeling triggered, and he was like, "Okay, okay, okay." Like he didn't touch it at all to jump to what he did. He knows how I've always been somebody that doesn't like things around my neck. Like I don't like hands really around my neck because it brings me back to the other moments that I've had.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I couldn't wear a necklace, which it bothered me in April and it bothered me in October. because for April for Sexual Awareness Month, like I wear this necklace every single day of the month. It has a teal, it's a ribbon with a teal stone and it says S. S is for a survivor, but my name also starts with an S, so it helps. And then October, I wear a necklace every day that has domestic violence, like it's purple for domestic violence. So I felt like the way I advocate got taken.
Yeah.
Uh, I had some nice shirts that I like that I couldn't wear for my birthday. I wore nothing around my neck.
Mhm.
And it took till the year after, like I still wasn't doing it. And it was on my birthday, and I was like, I'm going to put on this necklace. Like he doesn't get to take away this outfit.
Good. I like
Um,
that. Despite the fact it has an effect on you, you're not gonna let it stop you. I like that.
it helped because my girls came down. It was my 30th, and my girls came down, and I said I wanted to wear it. Like I was like, I want to wear this necklace. So we took our time to put it on. I had to deep breathe.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, if at any point you see me start, just take it off. Like we had again, a safety plan.
Yes.
Just take it off of me.
Good. I like that. Retrain your amygdala that this is not going to take control of you anymore. So, how do you explain love and violence to a child whom the abuser is someone they're supposed to trust and love?
So it did. My kids are very straightforward. They're very literal, like me, and they're very curious. And I'm big on ask the question. I'm really big on ask the question. So they had asked me something about their dad. I don't remember how the conversation went, but they asked me something, and I said I love him. And then my oldest two were like, "Duh." I was like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "Loved." I was like, "No, I love him." And my son, who is named after his father, looked at me and was like, "Why do you love him if he tried to kill you?" It wasn't if, it was, "Why do you love him and he tried to kill you?" I was like,
Yeah.
I hope you never know. Um, Circling back to my dad, he didn't try to kill me, but like I said, that was a lot of pain. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, I learned that love and pain can exist from the same person at a very, very, very young age.
That's
So
true.
it wasn't a new concept for me. It's
Yeah.
a hard concept to explain and it's a hard concept to live through, but it was not a new situation to be in for me. So when I'm talking to my kids and I'm like, well, you're right. Like, you were there. You're right. You shouldn't. Here is why I do, because of all the things that he was for me, because of all the person that he has been to me, because he does know me to this day, honestly, I would say better than anybody else on this planet.
Mhm.
Like, I can guarantee he can still feel when I'm not okay. I can still feel when he's not okay. Even if we don't have the conversation,
Mhm.
it's there. We will have dreams and we will talk to each other in our dreams. Like, he knows me
A very unique story. Um,
very.
I think your kids have it made because you're teaching them. Yes, a part of your dad is a monster, but the other part of him, he's an amazing person still. So they don't have to grow up thinking, oh, my dad is awful, totally awful.
Yes.
And
And
then,
that is
because if they're half of him, then if all they know is the dad is just totally awful, then the half of them are like, that means I'm awful too. Many people don't realize that if you only tell the kids the bad part about their
fair.
other biological parent, if it is well known, if you don't let them be exposed to the good side, then that child is going to be going up questioning themselves. Well, if my dad is just almost a murderer, that who am I? But
Yeah.
now you're letting them see, but there's also good sides to him.
Like my mom did until a certain age, she wouldn't talk anything bad about my dad. But once I hit, I want to say like 10, maybe 11, um, it was constantly all these bad things about my dad.
How did that affect you?
Really, really bad. It was because anytime I felt like I showed a positive feeling or look or something about my dad, it was supposed to be shut down. It didn't stop me because I told you I made that promise to myself I wasn't going to go away from my dad, but it made me feel like I had to hide something. Uh, And I remember there were multiple times, like in high school, we would go home and we would sit in the garage with the garage door open. The sun would set. Like she picked me up from school and the sun would set and she'd be talking all these bad things about my dad. And I had to sit there and I had to listen and I had to be trapped in this moment of all these things about this person. Like even when I got to college, I had to sneak and see my dad. Like my best friend and I had to say we were going out and we would go meet with my dad. Like I couldn't spend time with him because my mom had good reason, don't get me wrong, because he also tried to kill her too. But that shouldn't take away from who the person, half of who I am. So my kids know they can ask me anything, like about their dad. They've asked, how did we meet? Like I say all the good things. Like I keep the pictures of us as a family in my phone so they can see you were born from love. Like, yes, I mentioned that there was a lot of sexual assault in our relationship. None of my kids are products of rape. None of them. So you were born from love. Like there were moments where we loved each other so much and people knew it. Like was nobody that didn't know about us. People used to always comment, I love your family. You guys are so great. I mean, that hurt too, because they didn't know what was happening behind the scenes, but we were a good unit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we thought a lot of the same things. So my kids deserve to know that this person is not all bad, like you said, and he does love you. He may fall short, but he does love you. And at one point, he did love your mother. It wasn't just one of those, oh, your mother's all these bad things. Da, 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 da. Like, no,
Did you also have a conflicted love relationship with your dad, knowing that, as you
I
mentioned, just mentioned, he also tried to kill your mom? Because
did. I found out about that when I was 8. My mom's mom called on the phone one day and I answered because my mom didn't like answering the phone. And she just told me the whole story. And as an 8-year-old, very, very confused. Um, didn't mention it to my mom because I've always felt like I needed to protect her, like I needed to make sure she was good because when she's not, we all feel it. Um, but I didn't tell her. And then one day it came up in front of her. And I think she was trying to shush her mom. And I was like, I already knew. She was like, what do you mean you already knew? I was like, I knew when I was 8. She's like, you never told me? Why would I tell you that? Why would I tell you that? So it was from that moment when she knew that I knew was when um
that is,
she let
that
all these
verbal diarrhea about your dad.
exactly. But it wasn't until he died. Well, no, I take that back. I asked other members of my family on my dad's side about the incident because I wanted to know was it true.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt said yes. She described it in detail.
Mm-hmm.
My sister said yes. My grandma actually, last time I saw her in person, she pulled me to the side and she said, "You know your dad tried to kill your mom, right?" And I'm like, "Wait, what? How did we get here?" She's like, "You know he tried to kill your mom, right?" And she told me the whole story. And then at some point my aunt took it back, but I'm like, it's too late. I already know what happened. And then so my aunt was my dad's sister. And then when my dad died and my sister and I were getting stuff from his house, I got a suit, one of his suitcases, was going through it, going through the paperwork. I was sitting at my mom's house. He had the court report, the officer report, I'm sorry, from that day. So I actually read everything that happened that day. And the next morning, I went in my mom's room. I sat there. Like I said, I don't like this word, but I said, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm
And she
sure
was
that
like,
meant a lot to her.
yeah, I think so.
Your mom likes to hear I'm sorry. She's not like you who doesn't like to hear I'm
She,
sorry.
she does. But she did say, like, that's not for you to apologize for. And I was like, I know that. Let's be clear. Like, I know that I didn't do it,
Mhm.
but I know it's never going to come from him.
So your A score plate is over this chat, from what I'm hearing.
Well, I think my score is like a 10. I think it's a
I
10.
should not laugh, but
No, I know, because it's ironic. Um, I've had a client where we did the ACEs and they got all of it.
okay.
So I know
For
that's
the
not.
listeners who don't know what the ACE is, can you describe it? Since you had an
Average childhood, I always forget the E.
experience, I
It is
think.
experience, okay. Average childhood experiences. From what I remember, someone did a study. It started off as trying to figure out how to get people to stop smoking, but people were dropping off of the study and they were looking at, well, why are these people dropping off and they're doing well? So they looked at the common factors that they have and they found out there's certain things that happen during childhood that will affect how you navigate basically the rest of your life. And some of the questions include, did you witness domestic violence in the home? Was anybody in the home arrested? Were you abused? And
So if your score is 10, that means you've
I
witnessed
think
all the
it's either like 8 or
experiences listed in that study.
yeah.
So how did you cope and how do you cope?
So ironically, my kids asked me that question because we went to California for Christmas, and my mom is still my mom. We got back, and my daughter asked me, "How did you survive your mother?" I was like,
That
"Gosh,
is that is an interesting question.
right?" I was like, "Oh,
Oh.
okay." Like, and I don't.
But I wasn't even referring from that area. I'm more looking at the holistic approach to all the different trauma that you've experienced.
Okay.
Because your mom had to deal with your dad, the
Yeah.
trauma from your dad. So that probably shaped, and she probably didn't have the coping skills that you have to
No,
help you. She's
no.
probably, it's a possibility she's still stuck in a phase that we don't know where it is.
Oh, I'm learning. I'm learning where it is. She she needs to feel control because control was taken away from her.
Yes.
I fully get
Yeah.
that. And honestly, for a while, that was absolutely me too. Like I needed to have, no, this needs to go this way, this needs to go this way, because I know if I do this, this, and this, then it's gonna go like this.
Mhm.
I've learned locus of control.
Yeah.
These things I can, these things I can't, and I have
Yeah.
to let those things go. Like my
Good.
mom's thing was always, I get in the car from my dad's house. Well, what happened? Full interrogation, full interrogation. And I hated it every time. But if I didn't answer, that would lead to other consequences. And no, I didn't
But
like that.
is it because she was worried about you getting
A
abused?
100%. She
Oh.
was very much, and again, I understand where it comes from.
Mhm.
There are ways to do it.
Yes. You
Like
just didn't have the skills that you have. So you
she
did.
did not have the skills.
I hope you have forgiven her.
We,
Because I feel her pain. I do. I feel her pain.
I get it. And like I said, as I get older and definitely shared experiences, I understand why she did what she did. That does not mean that it didn't hurt me too,
I agree.
and especially as a parent, because I know things are choices.
But you've had a way of turning all your pain into something amazing.
I have. And my mom honestly gives me a lot of credit for who my little people are
Yes.
because they have, especially my daughter, which is what she has more confidence than in herself than I had. And I told her until I was like 28.
Shanti, it's time for us to pause. But before we do, I just want to say thank you. Your openness in sharing such profound insights on grief and domestic violence has been truly powerful. Your perspective is a gift, and I know for sure that our listeners are walking away with so much wisdom from today's conversation. To everyone tuning in, this is just the beginning. Join in next time for part two of this deep and necessary conversation with Shanti right here on this radio station. Remember, life isn't just about fight, flight, or freeze. It's about finding your fabulous. Until next time, keep unraveling the extraordinary.